My name is Heidi Billington, and this is my web search PowerPoint project for Kinesiology 720. The title of this project is, Does Sport Participation Morally Affect Teenage Athletes? Participating in sports is highly accepted in society as a positive and beneficial practice. Is there evidence to support this idea that sport participation can have benefits such as these? Many of the benefits believed to be gained from sport participation include positive self-perception, personal responsibility, fair play, friendship, teamwork and cooperation, learning to respect authority, engagement in school, development of fundamental sport skills, health and well-being, according to Neely and Holt. Are these benefits actually attained through sport participation? Let's find out. The benefits described in the aforementioned slide can be categorized as character. Character can be defined in terms of moral development and sportspersonship. Character in sports is generally typified by the engagement in prosocial behaviors and the avoidance of antisocial behaviors. Prosocial behaviors are voluntary actions intending to help or benefit others. Is this true? Is sport participation to be given the credit for good character and positive life choices? Does sport participation morally affect people, specifically teenage athletes? So why does this matter? What's the importance of studying the moral development of the youth in America today? Well, here are some surprising facts about where our youth currently stand. Substance abuse in adolescence is America's #1 public health problem. 1 in every 10 children and adolescents in the United States experiences a severe mental illness that causes some level of impairment. About 17% of 16 to 19-year-old children and adolescents in the United States are considered to be obese. 13% of teens who admitted to have sexual experiences by the age of 15. Before the age of 20, 7 among 10 teens, male and female, has already had intercourse. The rate of pregnancy was 72 pregnancies in 1,000 females within the age of 15 to 19 during the year 2006. The staggering facts just spoken of show that youth in society are in trouble and many are suffering the consequences of poor moral reasoning. If sport participation does have a positive effect on the moral reasoning of teens, one more way to combat the devastation of many youth today will be known. So after seeing the facts about what our youth is like today because of low moral reasoning, we want to see what the literature says from this literature review about the effects of sports and moral reasoning altogether. We see first that coaches or physical educators who actively seek to promote moral reasoning development can do so. So it is possible to increase moral reasoning through sports and the use of appropriate coaching. Another study talked about moral development, and 2 groups were tested in this study, and one group was told to participate in sports as normal without any moral influence or extra moral attention being paid to the athletes on the part of the coach, but another group was given their sports, but the coach was intentionally seeking to morally develop these kids. And the study ended up showing that the experimental group that did receive these moral interventions, so to speak, had exhibited statistically greater moral reasoning after that intervention than the other group that didn't receive any of those intentional lessons on moral development. These facts and the results of those studies just talked about show us that sport participation can absolutely play an important and positive role in the health and development of young children and youth and their moral reasoning. So let's talk to moral reasoning for a second. Moral reasoning, perceived character development effectiveness positively correlated with athletes' pro-social behaviors. However, it's unrelated to antisocial behaviors, thus perceiving the coach as being effective in instilling an attitude of good moral character may lead to an increased frequency of desirable behavior, but it doesn't appear to have an effect on antisocial conduct. What does all that mean? It means that character can be developed through good coaching and sport participation. As we've seen many times already, research does affirm that sport involvement can have a positive effect on moral reasoning when it is the goal. Now, looking at that, what effect does sport participation and increased moral reasoning have on the negative facts about today's youth that we spoke of earlier, those having to do with substance abuse, obesity, mental illness, and sexual behaviors? How does participating in sport combat those problems due to low moral reasoning? Speaking of substance abuse specifically, sport participation is associated with a decreased drug use. In the study given, 80% of participants showed decreased illicit drug use than non-participants in sports. Additionally, 50% of the studies show negative association in marijuana use. We see that participation in sports reduce the risk of overall illicit drug use, but particularly during high school, suggesting that this may be a critical period to reduce or prevent the use of drugs through sports. Let's talk about obesity. Participating in sports or other forms of physical activity can help children maintain a healthy weight. Sports provides opportunities to regularly engage in moderate to vigorous physical activity, and it can prevent conditions and diseases associated with physical inactivity and being overweight or obese. We see that youth who participate in sports are more physically active than non-athletes. And speaking a little more specifically, girls who play sports in middle school are much more physically active in 12th grade. So the effects of playing sports in middle schools transfers all the way over through 12th grade for these girls. It's important because physical activity levels typically decline as girls enter high school. So seeing that increased sport participation in younger ages transfers over is very beneficial. Mental illness is a huge problem in society today. Adolescents who play team sports in grades 8 through 12 have less stress and better mental health as young adults. Additionally, physical activity significantly aids mental health by improving mood. Another thing we know is sports teams could be used as a protective treatment against stress and depression in early adulthood. That's saying we can combat mental illness through sport participation. Sexual behaviors. Teen athletes are less than half as likely to become pregnant than non-athletes. Teen athletes tend to delay the first time they have sexual intercourse, and they have less sex and fewer sex partners than non-athletes. This fact alone speaks to a great deal of health benefits outside of just the idea of sexual behaviors, but also the decrease in sexually transmitted infections or diseases, and of course that pregnancy factor spoken of above. Additionally, teen athletes that do participate in sexual activity use birth control, including condoms, more often than non-athletic counterparts. So overall, the participation in sports has helped to either decrease or protect youth sexual behavior activity. The literature review leads us to know that research overwhelmingly supports the idea that sport participation has a positive effect on youth by evidence of reduced substance abuse, lower rates of obesity, less mental illness, and a reduction in sexual intercourse by youth. After discovering the information in the literature review, we can conclude that sport participation can improve moral reasoning in youth and adolescents, as evidenced by combating the negative decisions that lead to substance abuse, obesity, mental illness, and sexual behaviors, and therefore cause us to see a reduction in these things through sport participation. We also see that sport participation reduces substance abuse in youth and adolescents. Additionally, sport participation reduces obesity in youth and adolescents. Sport participation reduces mental illness in youth and adolescents. And finally, sport participation reduces sexual behavior in youth and adolescents. Since research shows that sport participation does have a positive effect on the moral reasoning of teens, as evidenced by their decision making, participation in sports should be highly encouraged to teens. The study provides support for participation in high school athletics. The most popular high school sports include basketball, volleyball, track and field, softball, and soccer. In order to see a further increase in moral reasoning, good decision-making, and character development in today's teens, advocacy, encouragement, and promotion of high school athletic participation should ensue. So the implication here is that because we see that sport participation has so many great benefits, we as teachers and professionals and coaches should be encouraging students to participate in athletic programs. Looking at similar studies, we see that other studies have been done in order to provide evidence of the positive effects of participation in all extracurricular activities. Some of these studies include one entitled Young School-Age Children's Behavior and Their Participation in Extracurricular Activities. Another is Benefits and Costs of Faculty Participation in Extra and Co-Curricular Activities, which seems like it would focus on the costs of extracurricular activities, but really there's a lot of emphasis there on the benefits of ECAs in general. And another study shows these things also. It's entitled Supporting High Quality Extracurricular Primary School Sport in Wales, an Evolution of a university community partnership initiative. And again, there's a secondary purpose, but we see that there are many benefits to extracurricular activities, and those are discussed in that study. As an addition, I wanted to talk about some of the not so collegiate, so to speak, studies that have been done. But many athletes and successful individuals in society, they attribute personal success in part or whole to participation in childhood sports. So as we know, youth today very much look up to celebrities and professional athletes. And when we see those iconic figureheads speaking to the benefits of participation in sports, that's just one more way to advocate for the participation in sports, and also to talk about how sport participation increases moral reasoning or the likelihood of becoming successful according to these individuals. We see Emma Watson played field hockey, Dakota Fanning was a cheerleader, George Clooney played baseball and basketball. Brad Pitt was involved in golf, swimming, and tennis. Ellen DeGeneres played tennis. Jon Stewart was a soccer player. Avril Lavigne was a hockey player. Brenda Song is actually a black belt in Taekwondo. And Ronald Reagan played football. So we see here, these are definitely some big figureheads that youth today would know about and could be encouraged to participate in sports through the influence of these figureheads. Although not popular in a celebrity standpoint in America, there was a professional case study done to investigate Guevara, who was an Argentinian revolutionary. And that study found that sport and leisure played a significant role in the development of this young Ernesto Guevara. The early experiences influenced and, in some cases, altered the path of the ambiguous adolescent. And so we see there that this revolutionary figure from Argentina was also affected through sport participation at a young age. As we've been talking about the positive effects and benefits of sport participation, increased moral reasoning, and better decision making, alternative explanations for these things are primarily the argument that it's not sports that necessarily improves moral reasoning and better behavior, but rather that the teenagers are involved in something that gives them a positive use of their time, which helps combat bad behavior because there's not that idle time left to be the devil's workshop that we so often hear about. So the primary argument is that it's not sports, but it's any extracurricular activity that keeps kids busy so that they're not left to find other things to do. Limitations in this study primarily include the definitions we've been talking about. Character and moral reasonings are things that are really difficult to define and have several different definitions. So most believe that having character or good character comes with a lot of universal values, but unfortunately some don't consider a decreased moral reasoning to be a negative impact on character. While the common belief is the two play hand in hand, some think that moral reasoning skills don't necessarily contribute to character. And on the flip side of that, moral reasoning or the ability to make good choices based on values is seen as something separate from character. So the big study limitation is that we've looked at benefits that have to do with character and moral reasoning and decision making, but not everyone agrees that what you and I may think is positive is actually positive in all cases, and not everyone agrees on the lines between right and wrong. So that's the major limitation with this study. As an educator, oftentimes when I'm teaching writing, I like to say, when you think you're done, you've just begun. And that rings true for this research study. Although we found that moral reasoning can be affected by sport participation, it's recommended that further research take place to see if moral reasoning could be changed amongst athletes over time due to a coach's influence alone. It's also recommended that further research take place to evaluate if sport participation that emphasizes moral reasoning could compensate for negative home environment that supports low morality. And finally, it's recommended that further research take place to evaluate if moral reasoning in an athlete is a direct reflection of values embraced within the home. So, in conclusion, we have seen that moral reasoning and good decision-making and positive benefits can come out of sport participation, and we also know that further research can always be conducted for greater learning experiences.